Welcome back to the Prayin and Slayin Podcast, the official podcast of Light the Fire Outdoors. And today we are launching another series in the Prayin and Slayin Podcast. It's called Operation Hunt. And what this is we bring in veterans from all over the place, every single branch that had a phenomenal hunting season. And we have them tell a little bit about their life in the military and get to learn all about that, maybe some cool stories from those guys. And then we cap it off with an awesome hunting story from the last season. You just heard from this guest. It helped us kick off our conservation series. So Taylor Philpot is joining us. He's a U.S. Air Force veteran. He's got some awesome stories to tell. We get to learn a little bit about his military career, and then we get to hear the story of HONK, an Alabama monarch, just an awesome giant deer that he had the opportunity to take this year, and we get to hear the story about how he got that one just a little bit early, but I'll let Taylor tell you the rest. With that, guys, let's go ahead and jump into the podcast with Taylor Philpot, and let's hear the story of HONK. All right, well, you ready to jump into it?
I'm ready.
All right, dude, let's do it. Well, welcome back, everybody, to the Prayin and Slayin Podcast. We have a former guest, Taylor Philpot, back on today from Revive Outdoors. If you haven't listened to that episode yet, jump back and listen to it. But today, he's also spearheading the Operation Hunt series for us, where we bring on a military veteran who had an awesome hunting season. We get to learn a little bit about their military background, their family life, that kind of stuff, and how the military impacted that. And then, obviously, what we're all here for is the awesome hunting story from their great season. So, Taylor is actually, by random luck, the time it took us to record this, sounds like you got 2 buck stories you might be bringing us today.
Yep, that's exactly right.
Yeah, heck yeah, man.
I'm excited.
Even better. Yeah. So we had one in the books. He killed an awesome Alabama deer. And then through Revive Outdoors, he actually has another story to share with us that just happened to be this weekend, it sounds like. So excited to hear about that, man. Well, welcome again, Taylor, and thank you for joining, man.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for having me back. I'm excited to get in here and hopefully share some cool stories. But maybe somebody that's listening, you need to hear from God today, or hear from man, and be encouraged. So hopefully we do that today.
Yeah, man. Well, I'm encouraged already. I just put my toddler down to bed, and it sounds like you had a little bit of a hiccup with the kiddo as well, right?
Yeah, yeah. For everybody listening or watching, yeah, I got a brand new truck. Got that new truck smell. I mean, it is nice. It's a week old. You open it up and you're like, man, I spent a lot of money on this, that I didn't need to. But yeah, my daughter was not feeling well at school, so I picked her up. I'm like, hey, how are you feeling? Like, what's going on? You got a little fever? And like, not really anything. And then next thing you know, my brand new truck no longer smells like new truck smell. Now it smells like Clorox wipes and disinfectant. And yeah, so I made it to the podcast. That's what's important, with about 3 minutes to spare. So yeah, let's dive in. Enough about that. I'm excited to talk about something fun.
Yeah, man, oh man. Well, hey, it proves you're a family man, that's for sure. So awesome stuff, brother. Well, cool, man. Well, I guess let's dive into your military career a little bit. Tell us what branch, what rank you left at, and just a little bit of how long you were serving in the military.
Yeah, absolutely. So I was in the Air Force. I served 6.5 years, and really, really wish some days I was still in, and you'll hear why here in a second. But I started out, I went enlisted straight out of high school, and so I had just turned 19 after graduating high school. There's a little bit of delay, so joined. Went through all the initial phases of training and was initially an avionics technician on the F-16. So that's, for those of you that don't know, that's computer and electrical work on the F-16. So I did that for a couple of years, and then I did 1 year of honor guard. And while I was in honor guard, I helped coordinate with OSI, which is the Office of Special Investigations, to help close up. I think it was a 22-person global wide spice ring, and so spice is, it's got a lot of different things it can do to somebody because there's so much chemical makeup involved, but it's very dangerous. And I kind of, working on the aircraft, got tipped off to a guy that was using it. Moved over to honor guard. Loved my time doing military colors and honors and funerals. It was such a blessing, so much fun. But there was a guy in there that we were really trying to investigate, and he ended up giving us what we needed to close down the whole ring. And so that's when I got connected with OSI. So I went and knocked out my bachelor's degree and then applied for officer training school, got picked up to be a pilot, and started the initial phases of that, and found out anytime I made a right hand turn over a few G's, my neck would lock up and I couldn't look to the right, and so that's a no-go to be a pilot. And at that time, it was at the tail end of the Obama administration, and the force had been already shrunk down quite a good bit. And they didn't give me any options to stay in other than going back enlisted. And even probably the best of enlisted people don't get treated even remotely as well as a pilot in the Air Force. And so there was no way I was going from being treated like the best in the world to going back enlisted. And so I officially medically retired out as a staff sergeant, so E5. I didn't hold the rank of lieutenant long enough to be able to retire as that, unfortunately. But yeah, gotten my full disability retirement, and blessed to have that to kind of hold us up a little bit, especially in times like, I have to pretty much work for myself. Nobody understands, the injuries that I have from neck, shoulders, back, knees, feet, and how those different things will affect me throughout my days and weeks. And I might be completely fine one second, like I was cutting a shooting lane. Actually, when we recorded the last podcast, I had just got done cutting that shooting lane for someone to hunt. And when we got done with the podcast, I drove back over there to finish up some stuff, and I got out and my back locked up, and I was miserable for like a day and a half. And it's just weird things like that that'll happen that nobody sees. I'm not going to go and like, post everything's hurting on my social media, but I try to keep a positive outlook on things. I do chiropractic care and massage therapy, and then of course I take Advil or Tylenol. I get scared, like most veterans you've seen, that they're either really anti getting any medical help, or they go down a path that unfortunately, paired with PTSD, takes them somewhere that they don't need to be. And that's why we have such a high suicide rate. And so for me, I take anxiety medicine, every day, and I couldn't function without it. If I don't have it, I get really overstimulated, and then that turns to anger, and just real short and bitter, kind of with my family, because they're the ones that are with me all the time. And so I've really sought out a lot of mental health as well, trying to overcome the lasting effects of PTSD and things I had to experience. Yeah, I share all that to say that, there's help out there. You just got to be willing to put in the work, and it sucks taking that initial step to get help. And there's pride involved, but there's also just, you got to go put in more work that you've already done a lot to get to where you're at mentally and physically. And you got to just do one more thing. And but it's the best thing I've done. It's what's kept me alive. I mean, don't think, I don't say this lightly. Like, I've had suicidal thoughts. I've struggled with that. It's been a tough journey, and I have a support system. But when I get in a bad space, I have to go back to the mental health counseling, the tools and the techniques that I've learned to keep me alive. And I hope that anybody listening to this, wherever you're at, maybe today's a good day. Maybe you're good with your spouse or your kids, but maybe tomorrow won't be. And just remember what I said. You don't have to live in this constant shame and guilt cycle because of your anger, your outburst, or your flashes, night flashes, sweats, all kinds of things that you may have going on. There is hope and there is healing. You just have to just take that one simple step. And if you ever need help with that, you can always reach out to me through our nonprofit, Revive Outdoors, and be happy to help get you connected. We connected over 110 people to mental health counseling. And yeah, it's just a blessing to play a part. But I know I got a little into it there, Aaron. But yeah, just felt like God was leading me to say that just then.
Yeah, man. No, that's all great stuff, and definitely a lot there. And like you said, the things you went through, and a lot of guys and gals in the armed forces go through, especially over the last, 2 decades, 3 decades, whatever it's been, has been a lot more than, in our lifetime. It's really been the biggest thing. So, and we've learned a lot about the effects of that. And there are things now, which is amazing to see, outdoor community or non-outdoor community. There's a ton of resources out there. So I'm glad that you brought that up because that is a big part of everyday life now, which is crazy to think about. And there's a lot of men and women out there that do this day in and day out, and that's their reality. So, no, great stuff, man. If you don't mind me backtracking a little bit on the number one, awesome that you worked F-16s. That was my job as well. Weapons loader is what I chose. Avionics was on my list, but I chose weapons loader. It sounded cooler at the time, and then I probably wish I would have done avionics looking back. But hey, that's all right. You got to work a little bit hand in hand. There are a lot of electrical systems there.
Yeah.
But the spice ring thing, so is that just was the person you were investigating the only one that was in the military, or was that like a military only like drug ring that was going on?
Yeah. So it was all 22, mostly Air Force members at the time.
No kidding.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
they were
It
like,
was wild.
that's nuts. Yeah, I guess I've never, and they always, one of the things to keep in mind, military, we like to lift our hand up and say that, hey, we're better than that or above that, integrity first, all the things, right? But like the military is a subset of any given population, so all this stuff does happen. That happens in the outside world, happens in the military too. That's the first time I've ever heard of something like that. That's pretty crazy.
Yeah. Yeah. And the goal is just like anywhere, but especially in the military, is to identify who's doing it and remove them from the force to protect everyone else around them. So, I mean, you had several guys that were playing a part in, working on aircraft that, some guy was going in that, or woman is going in who has friends and family that are trusting us as maintainers to keep those planes in the air. And to know that somebody was under the influence, I was more than happy to help take care of that.
The man bot's good. And then as far as military lifestyle, one of the things I get asked especially a lot about, it seems like more recently, we've got a couple moves, being a military spouse now, my wife's active duty, we've got a couple moves in a couple year span here. So it's definitely back to back and different than what we normally experience, every 3 to 4 years moving kind of thing. But anyway, obviously there is some family impact there. Like talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, at the starting out, I was engaged to my wife, and then we got married about 6 months into my Air Force journey. Realized we could get that BAH and
Okay.
that increase in income while I was in training, and so we got married, and then we ended up. So it took me, a good little while for me to get through all my training at the time because training pipelines were backed up. And so ended up getting to Arizona after we had been married about a year. And so about a year and a half total was my training. And then worked out there on F-16s. And then we moved to Montgomery, Alabama at Maxwell at the Air Education Training Command. I was at the Community College of the Air Force and then getting ready for another move. But within all the duty stations, or counting my training, I think we moved post-military, exploring some career options too. I think we counted at one time we moved 11 times in 10 years.
Holy
And
cow.
yeah, it was nuts. But it was a few moves like while we were in Arizona, a couple different, I went to, I guess you count San Antonio to Lackland for basic, and then over to Biloxi, Mississippi, and then up to Wichita Falls at Shepherd. And so went from, Lackland to Keesler to Shepherd, and then out to Luke in Arizona, and then back to Maxwell, and then was slotted for Vance for my pilot training, and then ended up before the whole family moved, like our whole house was packed. And I called my wife and I'm like, hey, we're going to have to reschedule the moving truck, reroute it, I guess, to Birmingham. We'll have to live with family. Like it was a real quick transition just because of the situation with it being a medical discharge. They moved pretty swiftly. But yeah, it was great. I mean, I wouldn't, there's there's part of me that says I wouldn't do it again from the mental aspects. Um, but overall, I mean, it made me the man that I am today, the provider that I am, the responsible, person who has integrity and character. And, I used to not be able to call people and talk on the phone. And when I was a kid growing up, and my last job in the military, I mean, I would speak in brief, 1,500 to 2,000 people in our wing. I think as if I'm getting that right, I know I was speaking to the wing. I don't remember, how big a wing is, but I feel like it was somewhere
Yeah.
around that.
Sizable. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's
And
amazing.
yeah, so it's just like the communication growth, the personal growth, I mean, the knowledge growth. I mean, from bouncing around, I became a 7 level in 2 years in the avionics world. I've always been just a student of kind of obsessive person of whatever I do, and so I became a 7 level really quick.
Yeah, that's
We were,
fast.
yeah, we were undermanned as well, and so we had one 7 level for like 3 shifts, and it was the largest graduating classes that they were pushing through F-16 training at the time at Luke. They had never graduated that many students in that short of a time. And we were undermanned at that because the Obama administration was, cutting the force. I mean, we went to doing, two or three guys a job to one guy doing two or three jobs. I mean, it was wild from that start of that to the end of me doing that. But yeah, we moved a lot, but met a lot of really awesome people that are still some of our closest friends today. I think in the military, there's no such thing as a bad duty station. I prefer a warm one. I'm not much for Minot or, somewhere up there in the cold. But every duty station is what you make it. It's about the community and the people around you. And I had some really crappy people that I worked with in avionics. Morale was at an all-time low. I mean, all the guys were used to working in 3-man teams and going down to single-man teams and having one 7 level to cover 3 shifts. It sucked. So I can understand, where they were at in their headspace, but it was not a fun place to work. We had several suicides during that time, and it was crazy. But at the same time, we met people through the churches, that we attended in each location. We had small groups. We had people that supported us that would invite us into their houses like family, and it was a blessing at the same time as a lot of this tough stuff that was going on. It's a sacrifice, and I knew what I was signing up for, and I would still be doing it to this day if I didn't get hurt, and I loved every second of it. But now, looking back, there are some things that, maybe finance would have been a pretty good option for me. I was already messed up from childhood, and then I get in the military and I just add to it. If I'd have been in finance, I would have, at least stayed kind of where I was at and got better. But
Heck yeah, man. Got really,
yeah,
really good at Chinese football, that's for sure.
yeah, that's right. Yeah, spreadsheets.
Exactly. Yeah, and all those closed for training breaks would have been nice. Man, you would have had it set.
That's exactly right.
If I never have to see DTS again, and we deal with it on my wife's side now, but man, that's its own program.
It is rough. It is rough. Yeah.
That's all good stuff, man. It is a crazy lifestyle for sure, but I love that you brought up the community aspect because I think especially you came in a lot younger, I guess. So I went through I did the National Guard, but I didn't join until I was like 20 or 21. So I was kind of in, basic training and tech school. Like I was the old guy in a lot of ways. Like I wasn't the oldest guy in there, but for sure, like up there, one of the few guys that was over 21. Um, but I mean, you join kind of as a baby, and it's pretty amazing what people do and go through and all that stuff. And then, like you said, all those life decisions that you get thrust into, and all the moves and everything else, it gets a lot. But the negative outlook on duty stations, a lot of that, if you did a poll on the age range of like negative connotation versus positive connotation, I would imagine there's a separating line right about 24, 25 years old is where people think positively of where they're stationed. Anything lower is probably a lot more the negative side. But man, Montana was that way, but it's a huge security forces base, being nukes and everything else up there. And a lot of security forces, a lot of young population, but anybody else that holds the other jobs, like they're like, dude, this is heaven. This is amazing. But
Right.
your neighbors make a big deal of it, or a big piece of that pie. And if you can immerse yourself into the community, do it. Get out there in the civilian side, meet people. It's cool being an outdoorsman too, because we all go to the hunting shops locally, and when you're there, you're trying to meet as many people as you can to try to figure out what you want to do outdoorsman wise and everything else. And yeah, it kind of pushes you develop a different person or a different traits and different skills like communication and everything else. And you probably really even have to, being able to stay in a comfort zone. It gets people outside their comfort zone. That's
Yeah.
for sure, and does it during kind of those developmental years, still in your early adulthood.
Yeah.
But
It's I like the point that you hit on about age. If you think about it, it's really crazy. Especially, we don't see it a lot in the Air Force where, we're having to take people's lives a lot of times, to defend our country. But you think back of, a lot of these guys that survivor's guilt, or they had to make that decision to take an enemy combatant's life. When you think through that lens, most of these guys are ranging from 18 to 21 years old when they're doing that, because usually the lower ranking people are the ones doing that until you get into special forces where those guys do it for a long time.
mhm.
But usually what takes place is, the guys at the lower end of the ranking systems are the ones out there on the front lines. And, you just think about like your average 19, 20, 21-year old that on the street right now, and think about them going out and engaging in combat. It's a pretty wild, thing to think about. And your brain is still very much developing, and then you put that level of trauma on top of it. It's just pretty wild to think through.
This is Aaron, and I want to take a quick break from the podcast to talk to you about our first ever partner of the Prayin and Slayin Podcast and official partner of Light the Fire Outdoors, Dead Nuts Outdoors. These guys allow you to take your range and practice experience to the next level with their ultra high definition, life-size 2D targets. That's right, I said 2D. This technology is super cool because no longer have to worry about bulky, weather-beaten, 3D super heavy targets for your backyard. And for me personally, being a military family, this is super important. We're actually just gearing up to move to our next duty station here, and I get to fold my entire backyard range, which is a bighorn sheep, full-size grizzly bear, full-size elk, mule deer, pronghorn, and whitetail. All of these targets will fold up into just a few inches of space and weigh like just a couple pounds all together. That's super cool. And they also just introduced their Vital X technology, which actually gives you guys an inside look at the real 3D anatomy of each individual target. Whether you're shooting a black bear versus an elk versus a whitetail, you just simply scan the target. It shows you a 3D real anatomy image of what's going on inside that target, so you can just get educated on why each shot is important and where that arrow or bullet that you hit, what it's actually doing inside as it affects that animal. Guys, if you want to check out more, go to www.deadnutsoutdoors.com. We are so proud to be partnered with these guys and taking their business to the next level. And please check them out again, www.deadnutsoutdoors.com. All right, now let's get back to the episode.
But my cousin, he joined, he ended up, it was funny because he went in, he wanted to be a pararescue, a PJ, and he wanted to go in special forces. And it was kind of cool to see him go through all of that at an older age, because, you get comfortable the older, you get more comfortable the older you get with everyday life. And he was just at a place where he was kind of sick of the world and wanted to join, and he showed that he could do it. And he was a PJ for several years. I think he was in probably about the same time as me, and he has challenges mentally. I mean, we talk about that, and like he just went down to a special mental health retreat somewhere in, I think, South America, and it was really powerful for him. But he's in real estate too, and so it's cool. We get to talk about a lot of similar things. But I think for the people that are watching this that may not be military, like, just think about the average 18, 19, 20, year old that and that's the bulk of the age of most of these people had to make the decisions that they made. And it's, it maybe helps give you a little bit of empathy on, where they're at when they're in their 30s and 40s, and why you might think they're a little strange.
Mm-hmm.
But they went through a lot. And so especially those, frontline Army and Marine guys, it's tough on them. And we've lost some people that, I grew up with my whole life to suicide. And, it's something that we fight every day to try to keep everybody alive, because they had to make those decisions, and I think a lot when we pulled out of the Middle East like we did in the way that we did. I think that was really hard for a lot of people because it felt like what they did wasn't worth, the pain that they're going through now. So, but yeah, I don't want to get too off topic. I know we're probably, who knows how far we're into this already. Yeah, 30 minutes or so. And
Um,
so, yeah, let's keep going.
Yeah, man, you bet. Awesome. Well, like you said, I think you touched it here. If you've listened to the last Revive Outdoors podcast, you know that a lot of, some other things and on top of military, retirement and stuff that you went through is kind of what drove you into the outdoors to try to find a little bit of peace and quiet. And help kind of settle some things for you. So that's where you transitioned into hunting, or has hunting always been something that was part of you, just kind of got enhanced then, or was that something you dove into like later after military?
Yeah, so I got stationed at Maxwell down in the Montgomery area of Alabama, and I had been hunting like maybe 3 or 4 times as a kid. My uncle took me, and so it was something I knew I was interested in. I just never had the time to do it. I was always in, some kind of sport or had something going on, and then I joined the military. And so it was something I knew I had interest in, but I just wasn't sure when I would come back to it. And then where we lived in that area of Montgomery, there were hundreds of deer in my backyard. And so I got permission to hunt, of course, at my house, plus the 200 acres right behind it. And it was really nice, but all the neighbors were like really excited when I started bow hunting because they were all in their 60s, 70s, 80s, had lived on that street their whole lives. And, everything to them was their flower beds and their gardens. And the deer would just, I mean, any little flower that popped up, it would be eaten immediately. I mean, it was the wildest thing. But it produced some really good bucks. I've got a 150-inch deer on the wall because he ate all that hosta and
Yeah,
made
yeah.
his antlers bigger. And so, yeah, I just started shooting. I probably there's no telling how many deer I killed, 50 plus in a couple of years, just in my backyard. Because in Alabama, it's $3 a day, and I mean $3 a season, and then a doe a day.
Okay. Wow.
So yeah, and then like my neighbors would pay for the processing fees for their deer, and then also for mine. Since I was in the service and I wasn't making hardly any money at that time. And yeah, I bought a $250 bow with $100 package on it, and could barely afford my arrows. I would reuse Rage broadheads over and over and over that came with the bow. So it was a Mission by Matthews. It was, and I whacked a ton of deer, including 150-inch deer with it. So I'm very proud.
Okay.
But yeah, we would donate them to the homeless shelters downtown Montgomery. I can't remember what they called that program, like Hunters for the Hungry or something along those lines. But we would kill them, and man, it was like 4 more would pop up. It was the heaviest populated area I've ever seen with deer. I mean, it was wild. And so it would sound like in the evening times when they all started moving down to the edges of the neighborhood, it's like the whole woods was erupting. It was so loud. But
Like
yeah, that's
Walking
where I
Dead.
yeah, that's where I got into it, and I killed that deer out of my backyard. I was actually up under my deck, kind of like Seek One, hiding behind an HVAC unit or something. And,
Yep.
smoked it at the time. You could only use like salt blocks or mineral sites or something. It's been so long, I can't remember, but you couldn't bait at that point in time. And so I had figured out that they all kind of came down into this pinch point in my backyard every day. And so I started putting like a salt block or whatever was legal at the time. And man, they were just coming hammer it. I mean, it turned that ground. I just put like a little, like a circle, like that big with the post hole digger, and then I put, the salt or whatever in there. And man, that hole, like by the time I left that house, was like as big as a truck bed. I mean,
Oh
and it
my
was deep. It was deep. Like when the deer would get in it, like their shoulders would almost be down into the hole.
God.
And so it was like a mixture of like a little underground stream that popped out right there. And so maybe there was just really good minerals in it already. And then it just kept them coming with the stuff I was putting in there. And I can't remember. I like if it was salt or if it was salt and mineral because, I've hunted so many different states now and different regulations I've had to pay attention to. But yeah, it was amazing. And so ended up that buck kept coming in velvet like all the time with his bachelor group buddies that were also really, really big bucks. And
Hmm.
at the time, I just picked the biggest one and shot him. And so my only exposure to hunting at that point, because we couldn't afford TV, like we didn't have cable and Netflix and all that wasn't out yet. And so my only exposure was like when I was younger, like watching, some of these hunting shows. When I would go hunting, it'd be on at the camp or whatever. And so like 150-inch deer in Alabama is like giant. I mean, we don't see that a lot in a season. There might be 10 killed this year.
Hmm.
And so I really didn't know. I'm comparing it to the 200-inch deer that I've seen on TV, that's in a high fence and they're making it out like it's not. And they go out and kill these giants. And so I had this big, it's a big 10-point rack. And uh, every time Kelsey, my wife, she'd go to the grocery store, I'd sit in the magazine aisle while she would shop and I would look at deer magazines and I would read everything that I could trying to learn about hunting because like I said earlier, I kind of obsess over things. I'm a obsessive learner. And so I just am constantly reading and trying to learn things to get better at it. And then I read this I didn't have money to get the deer shoulder mounted, so the taxidermist skull capped him and caped him for me. I had the cape in the freezer and then I had just the antlers on the skull cap. And I didn't know what I didn't know. So I read this magazine and it said if you want to kill big bucks, you take the biggest antlers that you can find and you clash them together as hard as you can. Like the bigger the better, because the more realistic it'll sound. And I'm like, done.
Got
So
it.
literally, I don't even know what time of the year it was rut wise, like if it even made sense to rattle at that time. But in the article, it talked about how you tie the antlers together in a string and then you run it up your tree. Well, I didn't have a tree to run it up, so I was hunting off the ground and I would take the antlers and I would clash them together really hard and then I would throw them and then I would pull them and cling them together and like kind of pull like I'm fishing or something with the string. And I didn't kill a single buck with those big antlers for years. But because I read that article and it was before, so much real knowledge was accessible, I carried those giant antlers around for years hunting. And then I was with the guy one time and he was like, "Oh my God, are those your rattling antlers?" And I'm like, "Yeah, that's my first buck with a bow that I killed in my backyard down in Montgomery when I was still in the military." And he's like, "Are you crazy?" And at this time, I hadn't killed another, big buck like that. I had killed some like 110s, 115s, and I hadn't killed my second 150 yet. And so, anyways, I didn't know what I didn't know. And it's so funny to look back on. So I actually ended up getting that buck mounted because my neighbor who helped me drag it out, he swore me to secrecy. Like he was like, "We don't want anybody to know that these deer like this live back here." And I
Yeah.
didn't understand that at the time, but being who I was in the military, the integrity and character, it's like, okay, yes, sir.
Yeah.
I won't say a word.
Yep.
And so kept it a secret and he ended up passing away a few years ago. So I got the buck mounted and it's in my garage now. And so the taxidermist hey had a tough job with that skull plate not being back, still together. But I had sawed them off right at the base of the antlers and uh, it was awesome. And
Man.
unfortunately, I had a SD card that had like bukus of photos on it. And I had a deer back there that was a 6x6 12 point, like it would be the state record by far. And a guy in our neighborhood shot it out of his kid's playhouse at night in the middle of all these houses. Like I lived on the back edge of the neighborhood. He lived in the middle of it. Super dangerous shot, super illegal. I was so mad because I was hunting it and Joker shoots it. Like we come home from church and it ran in front of our car. And we get up to our driveway and we're getting out and you hear, and I'm
Like,
like, what
wow.
the heck? I bet somebody just shot that deer. And sure enough, I didn't ever see him again. So
Um,
I knew there was only one guy on that street that could make that shot, without hitting the house, just the way the elevation landed. And then he had deer all in his garage. And so I went and asked him about it, and he swore up and down he didn't shoot the deer. Well, later that next summer, I was walking my daughter, in her little, stroller or something around the block, and that deer was hanging up in his garage. And I told him, I said, if you ever try to submit that to any record book, like I will tell everybody that you are a cheater because I know you killed that out, dude. He's like, man, I'm not gonna say anything. I'm like, okay, good, don't.
Yeah.
I was like, then at that time, I thought if the game wardens didn't catch him then it wouldn't be good. I didn't know about statute of limitations and all that kind of stuff. But yeah, he's got a big 200-inch plus deer in his garage. Perfect, typical 6x6.
Mhm.
Um, yes, looks very similar to the deer that I was chasing in Michigan this year. Yeah, it's just awesome. So, but yeah, that's how I got into hunting. Was just hunting in my backyard, killing a bunch of bucks, and not really knowing I had a honey hole back there of giants.
That's
And
amazing.
I tell myself every year I'm going to go back down there and hunt because they all love me and they would all love me to come back. But it's I don't know. I'd rather go hunt out of state and keep knocking my 50 bucks and 50 states list out.
Heck yeah, man. No, that's a pretty incredible story. I mean, that's about the greenest level hunting story I think I've ever heard. I
Yeah,
mean,
dude.
you learned hunting in town deer, which is cool. Like that's just not it's normal with the Seek One guys now, or definitely more people know about it. But man, it's that's pretty awesome to hear a story like that because we live here in Maryland now, in the middle of basically the DC area, and there are just hammers that they come up, they'll empty my whole bird feeder in a night. They do it, dude. And as it got to the point this year, I was convinced. I'm like, okay, I've got the permission. I'm going to do it. I can't bring myself to just feel right about it because there's this email group we have that for the whole neighborhood, and people post whatever they do in there. But like, it's a very elderly population around here, and if you just go off that email list, you think everybody loves the deer. But I've watched them eat exactly as I just decimate my neighbor's flower beds. But they also like let them eat out of their feeders and stuff. So I can't really gauge they say
Right.
it's okay, because they're my neighbors and I think they like us. But like I don't know how okay they'd be if they saw one flop over in their
Right.
yard, while they're sipping their
I'll
coffee.
I'll I'll do this. I'll make a deal with you because I haven't checked Maryland off my 50 bucks in 50 states. I'll make a deal. I'll kill the first one in your neighborhood, the first giant. I'll kill the second biggest though. I'll let you have the first one and we'll see how they all react. And then that way you're mentally prepared because you're still going to smoke the big one after I do, right? If I've done it, you can do it.
That's
But
it.
at least you'll be mentally prepared for how they're going to react or how secretive you need to be about taking a giant.
Yeah, heck yeah, dude. And there's a giant. I mean, he dwarfs all the other deer. He's probably 150, 160 antler size, but he's got, I mean, just way more mass than every other deer that's out here, way wider than every deer that's out here. And he's body weight. I bet he's at least 1.5, 2 times the size of all the deer. He's a big giant piebald. And actually I saw him
Oh,
he
wow.
lives like 2.5 miles or about a mile and a half as a crow flies, I guess, but to hike to where he's at is about 2.5. Lives down at the lake and he has a tiny little core area. When the rut happens, somehow he comes into my backyard. I've got video on my security cameras of him walking around my pickup truck in the front last year, all during the rut. This season, I only saw him one time. He hit a scrape. I have a mock scrape in my backyard, and he hit it twice. So that's when I knew the rut was kicking off. I'm like, oh, Frank the Tank's back. And then I never seen him again. So either he went off and died somewhere because I think he's got to be the oldest deer in this area, or
Yeah.
or maybe someone got him because he was all over this neighborhood last year and even this
Wow.
time of year, and I haven't seen him once. So I'm not sure what happened. But anyway, there's these other two deer that were here all season long, velvet, come up to the backyard, eat out of the feeder. It got to the point where I could literally shake a bag of bird seed out the back, and they'd come walking up the ridge and they'd stand there. And one of them would get to the point where I think he probably would have let me touch him. Like it was dangerously close, but I couldn't like read him, and he's obviously got his nice
Yeah.
rack on him. I'm like, I don't know if I want to get too close. But he sat here all year. So I got to the point, I'm like, okay, like I said, I got the permission. I gotta do it, break the ice, break that comfort zone for me. I don't know if it's kosher or not, but I would literally there's a big, I don't know, probably a 5, 6 foot drop into the backyard where the bird feeder is, where they like to eat. from my garage. So I would sit out there, and I've got the dead nuts target set up out back out here, and they would be down here, and I'd be shooting arrows about 4 foot over their back just to get them used to the sound of the bow, even because I'm like, if I can just center punch them, like I'm hoping they take 3 or 4 steps, don't really know what's going on. They're used to that sound, that iron will broadhead zips through them. Like they'll just stand there and fall in my yard is what I was going for. But it got to the point where the two biggest bucks that would hang out here all summer, like they'd hear that bow go off and they'd kind of do that quick flinch, and then they'd just stand there, look around, and they'd go back to eat. And I was like, I've got them.
Wow.
Then of course velvet drops and they disappear.
Yeah, that's right.
But
Yeah,
that,
I've
that
always wanted to be the old man that shoots the buck out of his window while he's, on the toilet in the morning or something.
you bet.
Uh, but my toilet doesn't have a window out of it.
Yeah.
So
Probably for the better too.
yeah, that's right.
That's
But
awesome, man. Well, so you obviously you've cracked some big bucks in your life, and then this year you named the deer honk that you
yeah,
smoked, and I'm excited to hear
yeah,
this story, man. So let's jump into this season. Tell us everything, because you're obviously, again, if
yeah.
you haven't listened to Revive Outdoors, go back and listen to that after this episode. But man, you're about as obsessively educated on deer hunting and all things, to the point where you can get people on deer reliably that haven't ever hunted before and all that. So I know that there was a lot of preparation to win this. So tell us the whole story. I want to hear about honk.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm excited. So, for those of you that don't know, we have Revive Outdoors. We teach adults how to hunt. So, brand new adults, most of them never even shot a weapon. We teach them how to hunt. We put them through a workshop, then they get to go on a mentored hunt with us. So, I have to keep tabs on what the deer are doing constantly. And usually, we'll see some like 4 different major shifts in their core areas, I guess you could say, throughout the year. When it comes to the velvet shedding off, to the acorns dropping, to the different times of the year, and ruts coming in, primary ruts, secondary ruts. So there's a lot that I keep track of just to make sure that our hunts are successful. And because we have spots all over the place, have to make sure the wind's right for them, and that hopefully deer are going to show up, because we want to be, we want to have a high percentage opportunity for that individual to take their first deer, so they can experience what that's like to go through that harvest process, to take that animal's life and then to harvest it to the point where they're putting it on their table. And so that it's made me a better hunter, but I've been obsessed with hunting before I started that. And but now it's just made me better, because I've got other people depending on me. If I make the mistake, then they don't get to harvest the deer. And so it puts a little bit more pressure, and it's a lot of fun. So I'm on a journey to kill a buck in every state personally, to raise awareness for PTSD and mental health. I have 10 states knocked out so far, and excited to jump in and hopefully get some more along the way. A little bit of background on bucks I've killed. I have, let's see, one, two, three, 4 deer over 150, not a single one over 160. It's like all these deer that are over 160. It's like I have something that happens. So I chased a 220-inch monster in Virginia. Was trying to Venmo my wife and pee at the same time, and didn't get to harvest him. And then I was in Kansas this year and saw what would be a 170 plus. Once I realized how big he was, I just didn't really pay much to the antlers after that, because we had to spot and stalk him like 3, 4, 500 yards away. Got him down to 20. Didn't realize my muzzleloader on my scope was broke, or my scope on my muzzleloader was broke, and so ended up shooting him in the back ham. He was quartered. He was kind of looking away. Shot him in the back left ham, and just went in. And then had a deer in Michigan this year that the people said they didn't really know what they were doing when they scored it. A private landowner off the public that I was hunting ended up taking him. They said he scored 170, but seen in person, pretty sure he's a 200-inch deer. And had him at 30 yards, and just cattails were too thick for me to shoot with a crossbow and make an ethical shot. So let him walk, hoping I'd get him later. And the public land pressure just pushed him over to private, and I knew that they were going to get him. So I left, and literally 2 days later, in Michigan, somebody killed him on that private land where all the public pressure had pushed him to. So just a monarch of a deer. And so for me in Alabama, I kind of look at it in a couple ways. If I get the deer, great. If someone on my team gets it, it's just like me getting it. I'm not, I'm going to get to hunt here the rest of my life. Something I believe I said in that first podcast we did, Aaron, is like nobody cares about the deer you shoot. Like when you die, the chances of those deer making them to somebody else's wall, pretty slim. 2 generations later, they're probably going in the trash if they didn't go in the trash when you first passed away. Um, so, at the end of the day, like community's everything, people are everything. And of course, I want to kill big deer, but if I can have the opportunity to let someone else experience their first buck or their first big buck or, their first opportunity on a stud, I'm going to let them take that just as if not, I'm going to take it. Now, if I can hunt that day and I feel like, hey, I really want to kill this deer for this reason, then I'm probably going to go do that. But there's certain times where I just feel like God leads me to help others.
What's up, guys? We're going to wrap up there for this podcast. We're going to continue on with a part 2 for Taylor, where he gets into the stories of not only HONK, which was the core of this episode, but actually a bonus deer story as well for the Big 8 that he actually helped one of his Revive Outdoors mentors harvest. And man, just hearing Taylor's humble heart, man, it brings me to Philippians 2 verses 3 through 4 that says, "Don't be selfish. Don't try to impress others. Be humble, thinking of others as better than yourselves. Don't look out only for your own interests, but take interest in others too." I can't think of a man that I know that embodies this more than Taylor and his entire organization and Revive Outdoors. And again, if you haven't listened to that episode, please go back and listen. It's an awesome episode about an awesome organization where it's all about getting others out in the outdoors to help them out with their own lives and to help better other people more than bettering oneself. So great stuff there. We can't wait to jump back in and hear part 2 of this story where we get to learn or hear about these 2 awesome deer that both Taylor and his buddy took there through Revive Outdoors. I'm excited to share those with you. And if you haven't yet, be sure to go check out lightthefireoutdoors.com. We have some swag there that you guys can get for Prayin and Slayin. We've got some new decanters for whatever your libation of choice is. We've got some Prayin and Slayin decanters, some rocks glasses, some hats. Got some awesome new Prayin and Slayin decals. I've got one on my gun safe, one on my cooler. Really digging those, and of course all kinds of other stuff. But every dollar you guys spend there goes right back to veterans conservation and local community support outreach projects. We're going to have more on that. If you've been following our social media, you've been seeing a lot about the Sunfish Pond project that we have going on here in Maryland. Everything you guys spend, you guys help partner with us in those projects, and we're starting to really see some results out of those, and it's getting pretty awesome. So also want to thank Dead Nuts Outdoors again for being the first partner of Prayin and Slayin Podcast. And guys, be sure to tune in to the next episode with Taylor Philpot to finish up the story of HONK and the Big 8. And as always, keep praying and slaying.